Yeah, for us in Hurricane Florence made landfall on a Friday evening. I believe it was Friday evening, maybe Saturday morning, which was the weekend of our 4-year anniversary as a church. And so literally we've got a hurricane hovering over us during our 4-year anniversary. Our church flooded. I know many churches had ceiling issues, roof damage and leaks. We're in a low-lying area, so our entire building flooded. And we had 6 to 10 inches of rain across the entire building, and we had to move, we had to relocate. I mean, I don't know what the total number is, but dozens upon dozens upon dozens of churches are affected, having to relocate, can't even worship in their own space. We're almost a year removed, and there's still some churches that aren't worshiping in their sanctuary today. And we were fortunate in the sense that we were back operational in our building within about 6 weeks. And for other churches, it took 6 months or 12 months. This shows some of the disparity of need and resources that exist. And so we were blessed in so many different ways with resources, financial resources. And God was so good in the sense that He provided for our needs and then in abundance. And so we actually used those resources and sent them to other churches in the city to help try to get them back on their feet, because, hey, we're trying to do this together, you know? And so we need to be together and try to make sure that we're in this together.
How has it been on me emotionally? Some days are better than others, but I've had a lot of bad days, and it's stressful. I mean, very stressful, because not knowing, when you're going to get back in your house, or if you're ever going to get back in your house, if is your life going to get back to normal? That's one of the things that I've been waiting on. Now here's a year now, and it still seems like I'm still in that storm. I haven't gotten out that storm yet. And I know when I can get back, my life can get back to normal, I can, proceed to be a part of society again, because right now I feel like an outcast. We all handle tragedy differently. And if you don't have the support around you like you need, you just get lost and you just get stuck.
I think from the beginning we just felt so overwhelmed with God's love and peace, and we just really felt like we were positioned perfectly to have gone through that and to be in that place where we could be a channel for His love onto our neighbors. There was 44 houses flooded in our neighborhood. We had 6.5 feet of water in most of them. And, right from the beginning, before we even got back to North Carolina, we were just praying so much that God's love would be greater than the flood. And He just more than did that. It was just so beautiful. It was so beautiful to me how organic all the organization came. And, we had a tent set up in our neighborhood where people just became like a volunteer tent. And all throughout those 2 weeks of cleaning up and mucking out and sorting through things, people would come up to that tent every day, just with tears in their eyes, saying, "I love Jesus. He sent me here. What can I do? I'll do anything." And they knew that they were going to be going through sewage-soaked houses and things, and volunteered anyway. And it truly, you could just see Jesus in them.
Miraculous provision over and over, like the loaves and the fishes constantly. For example, we had a situation, I remember one of many times one of our volunteers would come out from where we were doing distribution and would say, "We have 1 pack of diapers and this lady's asking for it, but we don't have any more to give out if someone else comes. What should we do? Should we split it?" And we would say, no, give that to this lady and we're going to trust that the Lord will provide more. And some church that we'd never even heard of would be rolling up to the back door with a van full of diapers. Or over and over again, the body of Christ was listening to the need, and whether they knew us or not, whether they had a relationship with Vigilant Hope, they would be showing up and responding to the need of the community. So it's just amazing.
The church came together and was really on the front lines of everything that was happening in the city. And so I had conversations with city leaders that said if it wasn't for the church in Wilmington, the city would have been turned upside down. I mean, literally looting and all sorts of things could have happened here. The first organizations on the ground were Christian organizations that had the resources, that had food, that had supplies. And it was the Christians in our community that I believe were the greatest single mobilizing force in our city after the hurricane.
When it hit, the one thing I saw was that instead of church leaders, instead of going into a panic, we actually went into progress. And I thought that that was great. We came together, pastors who had cell phone connection called the pastor right down the street. Hey, I got some people over here that need something. Do you have this? We actually just went into the mode of service together. I had one of my members who needed something, and before we got up and running at our station of supplying food, they were able to go to another church right down the street. And me and that pastor connected, and he said, hey, when your members came over here, we were able to help them. And so that was just great. And so seeing the pastors come together to work for one common cause to make sure that everybody had their needs met is what I saw. And so that was great.
I saw that churches and organizations working together made a big impact on what our community should be, which would be coming together and working and helping one another on a day-to-day basis. Because I really believe that's who we are as human beings. I know that there were a few people that came to our organization who got hands-on help, and to this day they continue to call to make sure that we're okay and if we need anything, because they felt that if they got help from us, then they can give back in return. So keeping the relationships that I had prior to and going on now, I think it's an awesome thing knowing that I could call on individuals and organizations said, can I get your help with XYZ?
Well, I loved what I was seeing. Everybody working together. It didn't matter what denomination, what doctrine, what your color was, what your language was. Everybody was just trying to help out.
It's essential for churches to get outside their walls. If they stay inside, they're not delivering the message of Christ or living out his example in the community. They need to realize that so many people are still hurting and homeless and suffering, and they still need them. Even though, almost 1 year's gone by, they are essential to them moving forward.
Right after the storm, just a few days removed from the storm, I got an invitation to go to a meeting with community leaders to talk about some efforts in what to do for our community and our city after the storm. And I showed up to the meeting, and it was great. I mean, it was like really good conversation. I mean, a lot of things, but I looked around the room and everybody looked like me. And I recognized that, okay, everybody in our community isn't represented in this. And one of the cool things that I believe God's doing in our city is beginning to build bridges and relationships across denominational lines and ethnic lines and generational lines. And so this is the hand of God. I picked up the phone, began to make a couple phone calls. Other pastors began to make phone calls, and literally within 24 hours, we hosted another meeting with upwards of like 50 pastors that came together in a room and talked about our efforts together after the hurricane. I mean, of different denominations, different ethnic groups. I mean, it was really a beautiful thing.
I think statistics say that when a storm hits of this magnitude, it could be 3 to 7 years before a household can just get back to where they were before. And so once the storm hit, I mean, it lasted for about a day. It just dumped water on us for a 24-hour period. But when that was over, it did damage that could last up to 10 years. And so it's very important that we continue to stay with people, not short term, but long term, to make sure that proper housing is met, to make sure that people have their basic needs, because it's going to be a long time just to get somebody back to where they were. And so it's very important that we continue to stay together and still help, because even though the storm is over, we haven't got beyond it yet. And so we still have to continue to work to make sure that we get back to better together.
What can churches do to support me and other survivors? Well, we know that, when storms happen and there's damages, we know that there's funding, have to be found to help these people, because not just myself, I worry about all the other people that's out there that can't get back home. I seen this when I was in the shelters, just so many people that, that just lost. I think that, responding quickly can alleviate a lot of things and not let people get lost in the system.
So I think there are a couple of things that come to mind. Number one, I think we as the body of Christ have to understand that there are crises all around us, that the hurricane was a really big deal, but it is one of many things that impact our city, one of many hurts in our city. And as the body of Christ, we're to respond not just to a natural disaster, but to the everyday disasters in people's life. And so I think recognizing that, like, we see people in crisis every day of the year on Greenfield Street. And so the hurricane was a really big deal, but it's just one of the many times that people need to see the body of Christ at work. And so that's the main thing, is just that we need to understand our work is not done and won't be done while we're here on earth. And then I think we have to educate ourselves about what our city needs. We have to read our Bibles and understand about our call to work as one body. And then we need to do it. Like, we need to put our hands and feet to it and not just read it and be like, oh yeah, one body within our steeple or within our, strip mall or whatever it looks like. But like, we are meant to be a living, breathing body. And when we are, miraculous things happen.